Don't just eat and sleep like a common animal. Make sure you remain disenchanted with worldly life and have a healthy fear of future birth. Don't just sit around idly, keeping vigil over the smoldering embers of your life. The Wild Boar. Meiji Gao communicated with non-physical beings using the non-verbal language of the heart, the common language shared by all sentient beings. A non-physical being's flow of consciousness infuses thoughts and emotions with meaning and intent, just as the style and content of verbal expressions are determined by the flow of human consciousness. Each current of thought that issues from a conscious flow is attuned to a specific meaning and purpose, and thus communicates a clear and unmistakable message. When a thought current intersects with the knowing quality of another conscious flow, it imparts a message directly to the receiving consciousness as a fully formed and coherent idea or opinion. Using direct, non-verbal dialogue, Meiji Gao questioned her non-physical visitors, inquiring about their histories and listening to their stories. She wanted to help them, but mostly all she could do was share with them the merit of her meditation and the purity of her spiritual life. It was for them to receive and make use of these merits as best they could. An even more bizarre incident than her communication with the water buffalo occurred when the disembodied consciousness of a slain wild boar appeared as a samadhi image in Meiji Gao's meditation. Wandering alone at night in search of food on the far side of Pugao Mountain, the boar was killed by a local hunter who hid near a watering hole frequented by wild animals, waiting for his next kill. In the early hours before dawn, a ghostly image of the wild boar arose spontaneously in Meiji Gao's visual field. Accustomed to seeing such apparitions, she directed the flow of her consciousness, immediately asking the boar's reason for coming to see her. The boar spoke haltingly, stammering as though still in a state of shock. The boar explained that it was killed on its way to the watering hole by a hunter named Dum. Meiji Gao wondered why the boar had not been more cautious about being shot. The wild boar pleaded with her to understand that it had always been extremely wary of hunters, always on guard as its very life depended on it, but a wild animal's existence was unimaginably difficult, and its suffering unbearably harsh. Living in the wild, totally at the mercy of nature's shifting seasons, boars lived in constant fear. Their lives were constantly in danger, threatened by natural predators as well as hunters and trappers. By being extremely vigilant, the boar had survived many years in the mountains, but in the end it could not avoid being killed. The wild boar told Meiji Gao that it was terrified of being reborn as a wild animal, enduring a life of unbelievable pain and suffering, a life of persistent fear and distrust. A boar could never relax, nor find peace. Fearful that it could not avoid another animal birth, the boar came to Meiji Gao to beg for a share of her spiritual merit and virtue to boost its chances of being reborn as a human being. Miserably, the spirit told her that it lacked a sufficient store of merit and virtue to be confident about its future state. The boar had nothing of value to offer her, except the meat from its freshly killed body. Thus it implored her to kindly eat some of its meat so that she might gain the bodily strength required to maintain her exemplary spiritual lifestyle. At the same time, this would allow the boar to make merit. Eagerly, the wild boar informed Meiji Gao that, the next morning, the hunter's family would bring meat from its carcass as an offering to the monastery. The boar begged her to eat it, hoping that this act of generosity would bring enough merit for it to be reborn as a human being. The boar wished to offer her the choicest cuts of meat from its body. However, people are greedy by nature, so it feared the hunter's family would keep the best parts for themselves and leave only the lowest quality meat as its offering to Meiji Gao. Meiji Gao was fascinated by her visitor's request. In many years of meditation, she had never come across an instance where the consciousness of a dead animal attempted to make merit by offering the meat from its own body. Feeling profound sympathy for its hapless plight, while radiating loving kindness, she silently acknowledged the charitable intention. She inspired the wild boar with the virtues of generosity, instilling a feeling of pride in doing good deeds. As with so many beings of the lower realms, she emphasized the benefits of the 5 moral precepts as the basis of a human birth, and encouraged the boar to adopt them as training rules for disciplining body, speech, and mind. She resolved to share the fruits of her spiritual virtue in the hope that the boar might be reborn as it wished. Satisfied with Meiji Gao's assurances and buoyed by her blessings, the boar respectfully took leave and went its way. Next morning, after sunrise, Meiji Gao met the monks and nuns at the main sala, and quietly related this bizarre incident. She described the wild boar story in detail so that they would fully understand the situation and accept the meat out of compassion for the slain animal, if the hunter's family were to bring the boar meat later that morning. She urged everyone to eat the meat as a way to honor the animal's generous intentions and, hopefully, to help its consciousness find rebirth as a human being. Later that morning, the wife of Mr. Dum, the hunter, arrived with some roasted boar meat, which she respectfully offered to Ajaan Kampan and the monks. When they questioned her about the origin of the meat, her answer confirmed everything that Meiji Gao heard from the wild boar, down to the smallest details. The monks and nuns all partook of the offered meat, hoping that in some way their act of compassion would ease the burden of suffering carried by that unfortunate creature. Meiji Gao learned about death and rebirth and the craving that connects the two, linking lives in an endless continuum of pain and suffering. She encountered personalities shaped by greed, motivated by anger, and weighed down by the burden of their own karma as they swam helplessly, aimlessly, in a vast sea of delusion. Beings trapped in lower realms of conscious existence have no personal merit, no spiritual virtues on which they can fall back in times of dire need. In previous lives, when those ghosts were born human beings, they failed to develop the habit of selfless giving and overlooked the protective power of moral restraint. Because as humans they neglected to accumulate a store of virtue for the future, upon death their consciousness plunged into a realm of darkness where it was nearly impossible to generate virtue. Having no recourse to merit of their own making, ghosts and other errant spirits depend on others for salvation. Should virtuous people of the human realm fail to assist them by consciously sharing the merit they make through acts of body, speech, and mind, ghosts are left completely destitute, with no means to move on to a favorable rebirth. They must wait, enduring the miserable conditions their actions have produced, until the karmic repercussions of their evil deeds, or of their negligent disdain, have been exhausted. To Meiji Gao, ghosts resembled stray animals roaming aimlessly through a barren, unearthly landscape, and hounded by their own spiritual poverty with no owner to look after them. For beings stuck with the consequences of evil deeds, it matters little which state of existence they are born into, since their pain and misery continue unabated.